She paid $85 she didn't have, printed 42 proposals, and walked into that room with one thing, a dream worth fighting for. But before she could say a word, she was told to wait downstairs. In front of everyone. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke until he did. A single dad. No title. No agenda. Just 4 words, spoken so calmly they cut through every noise in that room. She's with me. And 3 tables away, one of the wealthiest women in the country, sat frozen. Because she had seen everything and did nothing. Until that moment changed her. This is a story about what happens when one act of quiet courage, in a room full of silence, unlocks a door that no amount of money ever could. Welcome to Kindness Arena. If you believe in kindness, second chances and unseen connections that change lives, please help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't even reach 1,000 subscribers. Help me show her that stories like this matter and deserve to be heard by hitting the subscribe button, liking the video, comment your thoughts, where you are watching from, and share it with someone who needs it to stay motivated. Your support keeps these powerful true stories alive. The Grand Hotel had never looked more intimidating. Its marble columns rose like sentinels against the Texas skyline, draped in gold-trimmed banners that read, EDU Forward Summit 2026 Investing in the Future of Education. Black cars lined the circular driveway, depositing men in tailored suits and women in heels that clicked with the confidence of people who had never once questioned whether they belonged in a room. Mia Brooks adjusted the strap of her bag, the brown leather one with the fraying corner she kept meaning to replace, and climbed the steps. She had rehearsed this moment for 3 weeks. Her foundation, Open Doors, ran 4 learning centers across Texas for homeless and displaced children. Children who ate once a day if the food bank came through. Children who, despite everything, showed up to learn. She had printed 42 copies of her funding proposal, color-coded with tabs, each one representing a dream she had carried since she was 11 years old, and watched her younger brother drop out of school because her mother couldn't afford the fees. Mia was 31 now. She had built something real with next to nothing. And today, she had registered and paid the discounted community rate, $85 she didn't exactly have for a seat at this summit, because 3 of the most powerful education philanthropists in America would be in that room. She pushed through the glass doors and presented her badge to the registration desk. The young woman behind the counter, crisp in a red blazer, barely glanced at it. "This badge," she said slowly, turning it over with 2 fingers as if it was something she'd found in a drain, "is the community access tier." "Yes," Mia said pleasantly. "That's what I registered for. The community tier is for observation only. The networking breakfast is reserved for diamond and gold delegates." She slid the badge back across the counter. "You'll need to wait in the outer hall until the panel sessions begin. At 10. It was 8:15. Mia kept her voice even. "I understand. But the website said community delegates have access to the morning mixer. The website is being updated." The woman's smile didn't move. "The policy has changed." She found a seat near the entrance of the main ballroom and waited. She told herself it was fine. She could still make it to the breakout sessions. She could still find a moment to speak to someone. She opened her folder and reviewed her proposal one more time, mouthing the key figures to herself: 847 children served, 91% attendance rate, 0 government funding. At 9:45, a different man approached. Stocky, earpiece in, the kind of posture that said security without the uniform. This area is for registered delegates of gold tier and above." Mia looked up. "I have a badge. Community badges don't cover this floor. You'll need to move to the designated waiting area downstairs." He said downstairs the way people say outside. "The panel starts in 15 minutes, Mia said. "I registered specifically to attend the..." "Oh." His voice dropped, flattened. "I'm going to need you not to make this difficult." The words landed like a hand on her shoulder, pressing down. People nearby were beginning to look. A woman in pearls pretended to check her phone. A man in a blue blazer turned away. The room, which had been buzzing pleasantly, developed a particular kind of silence, the kind that forms around something people see but choose not to witness. Mia's face was warm. Her hands, pressed flat against her folder, were steady. But her chest was full of something she'd spent years learning to carry, the particular exhaustion of having to justify your right to be in a room. She stood. Not because he was right. Because she was deciding. And that was when a voice came from behind her, calm and unhurried, like someone commenting on the weather. "She's with me." Jairus Shaw was not a man who announced himself. He was 38, broad-shouldered, with the kind of face that had been through enough to settle into quiet confidence. He wore a charcoal suit, not the sharpest in the room, but clean, deliberate. He worked in education technology, ran a non-profit coding program for youth, and had been invited to the summit as a panelist. His daughter, Zoe, was 7, and was currently at home with his sister because school was closed for the public holiday. He had been walking past, heading toward the speaker's lounge, when he stopped. He had heard that particular tone before. In school board meetings. In grant offices. In rooms that had 100 invisible signs reading "This space is not for you." He'd learned to recognize it the way you learn to recognize the smell of rain. He stepped forward and placed himself beside Mia. The security man blinked. "Sir, do you know this?" "She's with me," Jairus said again, the same volume, the same calm. Then he turned to Mia and extended his hand with the easy manner of someone who had planned this all along. "Sorry I'm late. They changed the entrance." Mia looked at him. His eyes were direct and kind and asked nothing. She shook his hand. "No problem," she said. "I was just getting my bearings." The security man looked between them, recalculated something, and stepped back. "My apologies, sir." Not to her. To him. And that detail, that is stinging, clarifying detail, was not lost on either of them. Jairus let it pass without comment. "I'm Jairus," he said quietly, as they walked toward the ballroom entrance. "Painlist, Session 3. You registered for this." "Paid $85, Mia said. There was a dry edge to her voice. "Then you're supposed to be here." He said it plainly, like arithmetic. "What's in the folder?" She told him, briefly, open doors, the centers, the children, the proposal. He nodded slowly, the way people nod when something settles correctly into place. "Which philanthropists are you trying to reach?" She named them. "2 of them are in my session," he said. "Come early, sit up front. I'll make an introduction if I can." "You don't have to." "I know I don't." He smiled briefly, genuine. "My daughter's teacher once drove 40 minutes to make sure Zoe got her reading assessment after the school lost the paperwork. People who show up for kids deserve someone showing up for them." Mia didn't have an answer for that, so she just nodded and clutched her folder a little tighter. 3 tables away, Anna Scot had seen everything. She was 29, the sole heir to the Scot Group, real estate, logistics, a media company her father had started in a 2-room office in 1987. She was worth, by the most conservative estimates, about $340 million. She sat at table 1 with a glass of water she hadn't touched and a morning program she hadn't read, listening to the man beside her talk about tax structures. But her eyes had been on the woman with the brown bag since she walked in. Anna couldn't have said exactly why. Perhaps it was the way the woman stood, not aggressive, not shrinking, just present in the way of someone who has learned that presence itself is an act of resistance. Perhaps it was the way she held that folder, like it contained something worth protecting. She had watched the whole thing. The badge. The security guard. The dismissal. She had felt something tighten in her chest and had told herself it wasn't her business. Then the man appeared. "She's with me." Calm as the morning. Anna Scot, who had spoken at the UN at 26, who had restructured a failing conglomerate at 27, who had never once been asked to wait downstairs, sat frozen at her table. She was still sitting there when the panel ended. She found Mia in the corridor outside Session 3, alone, writing notes on the back of one of her proposals. The introductions Jairus had promised hadn't quite materialized. One of the philanthropists had left early, the other had been surrounded by a wall of people. "You're the one from this morning," Anna said. Mia looked up. She recognized Anna Scot. Most people in this building did. "I am," she said carefully. "I watched what happened. I didn't do anything." Anna said it without dressing it up. "I want to know about your work." There was a beat of silence. "Why?" Mia asked. Not rudely. But she had learned slowly, painfully, that curiosity from wealthy people was not always the same as commitment. Anna considered the question seriously, which Mia hadn't expected. "Because I fund 3 education programs," she said, "and none of them operate at your retention rate. I know because I just read your proposal." She held up the copy Mia had left on the panel chairs. 847 children. 91%. No government funding. She paused. "How?" And Mia, for the first time that day, opened fully. She talked for 20 minutes. About the centers, yes, but about the philosophy behind them. About safety being the prerequisite for learning. About how her teachers were trained in trauma response. About the neighborhood women she had recruited as learning assistants because the children trusted familiar faces. About the meals program, the uniform bank, the homework radio broadcast she'd started for kids without phones. Anna listened the way few people listened, without waiting for her turn to speak. When Mia finished, Anna was quiet for a moment. "I pulled out of a partnership last month," she said finally. "The organization had the infrastructure but not the heart. I've been sitting on the funds." She looked at Mia directly. "I'd like to come see the centers. This week, if you'll allow it." Mia blinked. "This week? I don't make commitments from folders. But I also don't delay when I've already seen what I need to see." Something shifted in Anna's expression, something that looked almost like relief. "I grew up with everything. I went to every good school. And I've spent a long time wondering if I was doing any of it correctly." She glanced down at the proposal. "You're doing it correctly." Jairus Shaw found them still talking an hour later. He had come back to check on Mia, a habit born from fatherhood, this quiet circling back to make sure someone was all right. He found her at a window table with Anna Scot, 2 cups of tea between them, the folder open, pages spread like a map of something being built in real time. He caught Mia's eye across the room. She gave him a single nod, small, certain, the nod of someone who knows they are exactly where they are supposed to be. He smiled, turned, and walked back toward the exit. His daughter would be home by now. He had a story to tell her about a woman who held onto her folder even when the room tried to push her out, and how that turned out to be the right thing to do. Zoe loved stories like that. They were, he always told her, the only kind worth telling. 3 months later, Open Doors broke ground on its 5th learning center. The funding came through the Scott Foundation. At the ceremony, Mia thanked 70 people by name. Jairus Shaw was not on the list because she had already thanked him privately, with a handwritten note that simply said, "You said 4 words. They were the right ones." He kept it in Zoe's memory box, next to her first report card. Because some things, he had decided, belonged to her future. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness is never wasted and that even a broken path can lead to beautiful places and change of lives, please like this video, share it with someone who needs a little hope today, and subscribe to Kindness Arena because your support keeps stories like this alive and spreading. Tell us in the comment what you would have done differently if you were the woman. Would you have forced your way in? Or has a stranger's kindness ever changed your life in ways you didn't expect? Would love to hear your story.